But if we didn't course correct and went into 2022 and going into 2023 and 2024 and we were still super aggressive, then like we wouldn't be in the industry very long. So going through this time where you're forced to be very conservative and methodical and still find good deals, I think that's going to build a good foundation for hopefully a long career in this industry.
Welcome to the Cash Flow Chronicles. I'm your host, Jonny and the founder of Catani Capital Group. For the last 2 years, I've been studying alternative assets and now help solve the problem of creating passive cash flow for creators, influencers, and busy professionals by bringing you 5 episodes a week of easy to understand education in the world of passive investing. What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Cash Flow Chronicles. I'm your host, Jonny, and I'm joined today by William Holland. William is the founder and CEO of Bigger Picture Holdings, LLC, a real estate investment company headquartered in Dallas, Texas, that focuses on acquiring value-add multifamily properties. William previously was on Balfour Beatty's pre-construction team, helping develop budgets for upcoming large residential and commercial projects totaling over $2 billion. His first role was managing over $20 million worth of construction planning, execution, and quality control on a 26-story skyscraper. William, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jonny, thank you so much for having me, man. I'm very excited.
Very excited to have you. We basically had a whole podcast offline.
That's right.
But ironically, he interviewed me. So now I get to return the favor recording and get your story. So very excited. I know the answer to this already because we had such a great conversation, but kind of give us Reader's Digest version of, what you've done. Obviously, we kind of alluded there, and what led you to real estate.
Absolutely. So my mom is a realtor and a broker. So she did that for about 10 years. And then she started her own firm. So she's got some realtors working under her. She's buying and selling houses for other people. And my dad's been in construction his whole life as well. So long term, I always said that I never wanted to build buildings. I loved the business, but I didn't want any part of that. And that's where I've ended up. So I'd like to be a developer at some point, but the focus right now is, acquisition of cash flowing real estate assets. So I studied mechanical engineering at Texas A&M. I love numbers. I love math. And I ended up going into MEP design for a while. So designing HVAC systems for commercial buildings in Houston. And I quickly found out that I did not like that. I was in a cubicle. I was literally like climbing ladders and popping ceiling tiles in these historic buildings and like drawing ductwork and measuring ductwork and all that stuff. And, it was the role of a true engineer. So I love people so much. And I realized that really wasn't for me. So I ended up getting to call one of my buddies from A&M on a Sunday afternoon. And he was like, "Hey, how do you like your job?" And I was like, "Man, I don't like it." And he's like, "What do you want to do?" I was like, "Well, I want to be in construction and be a developer." And he's like, "Well, my dad actually is a operations director for a big general contractor in Dallas." And so that afternoon, as soon as we got off the phone, his dad called me and we talked again on Tuesday. And by Friday of that same week, I was driving to Dallas for an interview. 2 weeks later, I'm working at Balfour Beatty.
Dude, that's awesome. I love that. And you've just recently left that as well, right? Within the last couple of weeks. What ultimately finally led to that decision and jumping, full time into the industry?
Absolutely. So, everything that I do, I like to go all in. And I loved my job. Man, I got to network with so many great people. I got to witness firsthand how you get projects started, and how you finish projects, like large commercial projects. But ultimately, I like business and I want to be, one of the top dogs, like calling the shots and like being a strategist and building those relationships. And so I'd been doing that on the side, maybe squeezing it in during a lunch break, an investor phone call, or trying to record a podcast. And then like as soon as, my time during the day was done, I'm running to the break call and trying to record another podcast or be a guest or whatever. And it's just like, man, like this is what I'm passionate about. I'm not passionate necessarily about construction itself, but about building the relationships and stuff like that. So ultimately, I knew it was like, man, I talked to a lot of people and they were like, "I don't think you should quit right now. Like, you don't have anything else lined up. How are you going to make money?" And like, they're freaking out, you know what? And like, man, it was like 3 o'clock in the morning one night. And I'm like, today's the day. I'm going to put in my notice. I'm a man of faith in Jesus. And so everything that I do, I spend time in prayer and I talk to other people about it. And, it doesn't make sense, but I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do this because I think something great could become of it.
I love that so much. And I relate to that so much because I'm just like you. I'm a burn the ships kind of person. And I know that you can do both. And obviously we have people in our circles, right? I know there are people in Raise Masters, right? We're both in Raise Masters. That's how we got connected, who say that, it's easier to do this. And that's probably subjective, but that encourage people to do it while still having a W-2. And by no means am I knocking that. Now that I'm, a year into my own thing, I sometimes wish that I had a W-2, but ultimately I think that it would only kind of hold me back from really going full board. And so you mentioned that you're a people person, right? That's what you love. So talk to me about what your ultimate goal is, what you've identified, as your avatar, and how you want to build in this industry.
Absolutely. So, with real estate syndication, obviously your listener base are pretty educated at this point. So I'm a syndicator. I got to join on a deal last year. So I was a co-general partner. I raised a little bit of capital and I put some of my own money into the earnest deposit. And so, I like to take risk. I have an appetite for risk, but it's everything is calculated. So with me putting money into the earnest deposit, that meant if it didn't close, I was going to lose my money. So I was sweating for a little bit last year because that was right around the time the interest rate started going up. And we had to end up raising a lot more money than what we originally assumed. But all of that worked out. The deal closed. We've been cash flowing, and we've seen a lot of improvements over the last several months that we've been under operation. And so this year, kind of my goal is to raise a minimum of $1 million. I'm focusing on the Dallas-Fort Worth markets and found a really good strategic partnership with a team that has lots and lots and lots of properties. And hopefully I can be a fund manager for them and continue raising capital. But my avatar are people who are Christians, people who are men and women of faith, and everything that I do, I try to lead out with that. I'm not trying to be a salesman or anything like that, but it changed my life, and I have a natural connection with those people.
That's awesome. I love that. And I can obviously tell how passionate you are, right? That's what we kind of bonded over. Now, I am not a person of faith in the Christian sense, right? Just different viewpoint there. So forgive me here if I say this incorrectly, but typically that avatar is a little bit more conservative, right? What's made you so, less risk averse and willing to take those risks, kind of growing up in the faith and being a little bit more conservative minded?
Absolutely. So I have a lot of mentors and a lot of really good people around me. I've got some mentors who are some big name developers here in Dallas. And, those people, man, I sit down with them. I ask them really good, I try to ask really good questions. And I asked that same question to one of the guys. I was like, man, what makes you different? Do you have just a bigger appetite for risk? Do you just like risk? And he's like, no, not exactly. I understand risk. That's what he said. I understand risk. So he signs, on a collateralized loan for a multi-$100 million building. And what that collateralized loan means is, if the property, if it wasn't built properly, if it didn't function the way it was supposed to, if they couldn't get it leased up in time, potentially the bank could come after his personal assets. And that for a lot of people, they would not be willing to sign on something like that. But what he said was, he's like, man, we're building a building that's going to be worth at least twice what the bank is loaning us. At the end of the day, they're not going to come after my personal assets because we're giving them a great product. So he's like, I understand the risk. And that's what I would say as well, man. I'm not just doing things in a vacuum. I've got people I can lean on, hey, does this deal make sense to you? Why does it make sense? Why does it not make sense? And I'm constantly consuming content. I'm constantly reading reports and listening to podcasts like yours, and I'm just constantly growing. So I am willing to take risks, but they're very calculated, and I have a lot of people to help me in those decisions.
That's awesome. I love that so much. It really, I mean, you said that so well. It really is risk adjusted, right? It's when I feel like the other side of the spectrum is people who don't understand risk and don't know how to analyze it and to adjust for the risk, which is really what we're doing, right? So many things are happening, and this is what, I've told investors. So many things are happening in the background before you even see a deal or I come to talk to you about investing, right? A vetting process and all of these things. So what does your process typically look like so you can get, present risk adjusted investments to your investors?
Absolutely, so you build really dynamic teams, as you know. I mean, you can't take down large properties by yourself, and if you are, I would say that's pretty unwise, and probably I wouldn't invest with you. There's just too many responsibilities. So everybody has their skill set. So you've got underwriting. Right now with the interest rates being pretty high and potentially rising even more. I know they've slowed down on the rates being adjusted, but you're able to buy like a rate cap. So that's like insurance that you can't have the mortgage rate go up higher than a certain amount. And so you include that in your underwriting. You also increase the exit cap rate. So you're saying, hey, the way that we evaluate the property, it's going to be less than when we're buying it. So, there's so many areas that you can just have conservative underwriting to account for that.
That's awesome. I love it. Yeah, it's true. You kind of live and die by the underwriting. And it's, we were talking offline how razor thin it is in both our markets, right? I'm in Salt Lake City, you're in DFW. Your market especially has, a lot of competition. What have been some keys in terms of developing those relationships, like you said, kind of those strategic partners?
Absolutely. So I read a book. Most people are not familiar with this guy. I wasn't familiar with him as well, and it was pretty crazy. So I think, let's see, it was 2019. So right after I moved to Dallas, or sorry, it was 2020. So COVID was just about to get really ramped up. But my mom sent me a podcast. So, she's got a guru that she listens to all the time, and Brian Buffini is his name. So he had a podcast guest. It's one of his good friends named Bob Bodine. And she sent that to me. I listened to it that day. And the type of person that I am, like, I just know it's like, okay, like I gotta go talk to this guy. And I like I said, I hadn't heard of him before, but I looked him up, and Sports Illustrated called him like one of the biggest names in sports that nobody knows about. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like I wanted to talk to him just because like he talked about in the episode of writing handwritten notes and like expressing gratitude to people. I'm like, man, I do that kind of stuff too. Like I love that, and I was like, I got to reach out to this guy. So I actually reached out to him, and we got to have a couple of phone calls, man. And it's just really awesome. But ultimately, like he wrote several books, and one of them is called The Power of Who. And I highly recommend that book. I hadn't heard about it. I've read it twice, and I rarely read a book more than once, and I probably will read it again. So the whole point of that is, instead of like going straight to the person that you want to talk to, or like most of the time, like your percentage of like connecting is going to be in the single digits. But if you're able to find somebody within your network that knows that person that can give you a recommendation, you've already built a rapport with that person, like somebody that they know and trust likes you and recommends you. And your ability to connect with a person that you need to connect with goes sky high. So that not only that works in like just building relationships with people, but that also works with investors. And like that's something that I'm starting to do as well. Is like, hey, we like each other, we trust each other. We've built a relationship. Like, who else do you know that might be interested in learning about real estate syndication? Like I'm not here to sell you something. I mean, like we talked about earlier, like, you can make money in crypto, or you can make money in the stock market, or you can make money in owning single family homes for rent, but this is just another avenue to build some passive income streams. And it's like I can't be a salesman. I can't go sell a car, to somebody that has a brand new car because they don't need that. But I believe in this product. Like it's changing my life, and I've been able to talk to so many people that it's changed their lives as well. So like I can sell that because I believe in it.
Gosh, I love that so much. That's so, so powerful. And it's true. And the irony, especially in this industry, is that if you do try to sell a deal or sell, you're really going to fall short, because that's not how this works, right? It's a very education first type of sell, type of deal, right? Where really you want to teach people why this is such a great option, and then let them decide to invest or not. Whereas with selling a car, right, you really got to get that emotion and right then, where this is you're dealing with a significant amount of money, so you're really kind of taking that time nurturing relationships, and I get this sense from you, you're very much like, hey, I don't even necessarily want your money right now anyway, right? Let's develop a relationship, let's get to know each other and make sure our goals even align. And you've obviously identified your avatar, so that helps it. At least from the start, you're aligned in your faith, which is huge, right, for you. So as you kind of move forward, what have been some kind of education pieces, some things that you've maybe something in the beginning you thought was really worth your time and wasn't, and what you've been able to focus on now?
Definitely. So I think one thing that is a hurdle is a lot of the people that I'm talking to, I tell them I'm in real estate, and the first thing that they ask is, "Oh, you're a realtor. Oh, you sell houses."
All the time.
So it's like not at all. That's not at all what I do. So I think one thing that I've learned, and we've got some friends that are in the space that are, marketing experts. And one thing that, I've only been doing this full time for less than 2 weeks now. But I've been working on it for several years, obviously, and building those relationships. But one thing is like learning, that it requires time for people to get used to this concept. For those that haven't been exposed to it before, so building out like a really nice drip campaign, and rather than just having calls with people initially and telling them about it, like letting them get some comfort with it first, and like run through like a passive investor's guide. And then, once they see that, then they can schedule a call, because now they're educated. Now they know some of the right questions to ask, rather than just saying, hey, I'm a real estate syndicator. This is what I do. And this is why you need to do it. It's like, well, that's just too much all at once for people.
Totally. Yeah, it really is overwhelming, right? Especially once you start talking about what the minimum investment looks like, right? Whether you drop your minimum investment down for first time investors, it's still a material amount of money. And there's kind of this stigma that you have no control, right? Because hold periods are long and it's not liquid. Ironically, though, you actually have more. Subjectively, I feel like you have more control in a real estate investment than you do in the stock market. Although you have more liquidity in the stock market, I feel like you don't have nearly as much control. A perfect example is, let's say you're raising money for a deal. In fact, you should be getting the operator on the phone, talking to them at bare minimum, if not going and shaking their hand and meeting them in person. When you go invest in a mutual fund in the stock market, you're not getting the fund manager on the phone to talk to them, right? As part of your due diligence, So it really is a very different type of sale, for lack of a better word. Ironically, though, we're helping people make money. And, once they kind of see that and get that proof of concept, it's been awesome. And you're starting to see that as well with your deal. So kind of talk about this deal that you did last year and, how it's kind of propelled you to go full time.
Absolutely. So we closed on a 170 unit apartment complex in Atlanta, Georgia. For people that know anything about brokerage, you have CBRE, JLL, you got Marcus and Millichap. So each one of those guys produce reports on an annual basis and on a quarterly basis, and they'll rank different markets. And so they take into account, people moving into the area, like how many jobs, job growth What are the rental rates? Are they increasing? What percentage year over year annually are they increasing? They take into account all of those different things. And they ranked Atlanta last year as a top 8 metropolitan statistical area. So the eighth best market for multifamily in the nation. You know what I mean? When you're talking like 1 through 10, like they're all pretty similar, right? And then maybe like, the 11 through 20, like are a little bit better or a little bit worse, I mean. But ultimately, yeah. So, you build broker relationships, you build lending relationships. We had to go through several different loan products, go to a few different lenders, and, you keep, at this point, it's like, well, we believe in this deal. We think it's a great deal. It's in a great location. It's in a great market. There's opportunities to improve the properties. There were some units that weren't online, so putting some CapEx into those units to get them back online, that's instantly, a way to bring in some more cash flow. So all those things have been in the works. And another thing that we were experiencing as well is delinquency. So there was a lot of delinquency on the deal. And, ultimately, like you have to, I hate to say it, but, we're running a business here, so you have to evict people that aren't paying the bills. And so we've been able to get some bad tenants out and bring in some new ones. And so, honestly, like it is going very well.
That's awesome. I love it. Is it Class C, Class B?
It is. So it's a Class C property. It was built in the 1960s. And it was 2 apartments side by side under the same ownership. And we've combined that into one. So it's garden style. So 2 stories, multiple buildings. And, we'll be adding a dog park. We've started some interior renovations and, updating some of the exteriors and signage and those types of things. And just really trying to improve the community,
That's awesome. I love it. Yeah, it really is a great market. A lot of great economics, obviously, as you mentioned, the demographics, and Georgia. It sounds like is a pretty landlord friendly state as well, which obviously is super beneficial. Now you're on the GP, right? Which is one way, listeners are familiar with. I've talked about kind of the regulations and that for like raising capital and all that. Do you enjoy being on the GP, or have you now realized that maybe the fund to funds is more your flavor?
I really do like being on the GP. I think you just get more exposure to, all the interworkings of the business. And ultimately, like I would be like wanting to be a lead sponsor, in the next few years. Like I wouldn't say that I'm necessarily ready for that yet, and I don't want to try to grow too quickly. I have passively invested in some other types of deals myself. So, I'm on the passive LP investor side on some deals, and then, I'm on the co-GP side, and then I rolled my money into being a passive investor on that deal as well. And then I think, this year I'm going to try to do the fund to funds model as well. And see how I like that. That might be an opportunity to really scale more quickly, as long as I can partner with some really strong other guys and other team members.
I love it. Yeah, there's definitely pros and cons to each style, right? The fund route allows you to leverage, strong operators, but not only that, identify a market that you may not be familiar with at all, but is a great market, and you can go and identify, the top operator. And if you can raise money, you're going to be hard pressed to find an operating group that says no to you jumping on, and it feels like the fund of funds is becoming more prevalent, like more groups kind of open and being more fund friendly. Are you kind of seeing the same thing as well?
Absolutely. I would completely agree with that. And I think that Race Masters is on the leading edge of that.
Totally. And I think part of it too is we've seen, as much as there's still capital out there to deploy, it's kind of sitting on the sidelines. And so, I think groups have been forced to kind of accept the fund model and be willing to be fund friendly so that they can still do deals.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, and with my construction management and, a lot of exposure to developers here in Dallas, a lot of those guys, man, projects are getting put on hold.
Wow.
With interest rates rising so much, that meant that they had to, I mean, in some ways, some of those guys are essentially syndicators as well. Like they're not raising $25,000 minimums. They're raising millions from probably family offices and partnering with different teams like that. But ultimately, like those guys are having to raise a lot more capital as well. And they're having to potentially like lessen the money that they're going to make their developer fees on deals to just make it happen. And so
Totally.
some of those guys aren't willing to do that. And so yeah, it's an interesting time that we live in.
It is. I was thinking about this, and I want to get your take here as we wind down. I'm actually super grateful with how challenging the industry is right now, because it's going to force us new people to learn how to do deals conservatively, right? With lower leverage, 70, even 60% LTV, how to make deals happen with that, as opposed to some of these groups who got in the last 3 years and did this bridge and were super aggressive and maybe running up against, maybe they don't have a rate cap, right? And maybe running up against some debt issues. I'm super grateful that we have to kind of learn in this environment, because it's going to force us to like learn how to do the business and not necessarily just go out and acquire and scale quickly.
Yeah.
What do you think?
And I think that's a lot of wisdom being spouted right there. Ultimately, that's going to be the biggest opportunity, and I think a lot of people are already talking about it. But I found a partnership with some guys that are scooping up properties that had bridge debt without rate caps, and people are literally about to get foreclosed on. So bridge loans typically are like a 3 year uh, rate, and then you have an extra year and then an extra year, so it's like 5 year a loan basically with a balloon payment at the end. And over the next few years, like people are gonna have to lose their properties or sell at a discount. And so that's the biggest opportunity right now. And like you said, I'm super grateful to not have started a couple years ago, because I mean honestly, like we could be millionaires by now with some of the returns. We could have made millions for our investors. But if we didn't course correct and went into 2022 and going into 2023 and 2024, and we were still super aggressive, then like we wouldn't be in the industry very long. So going through this time where you're forced to be very conservative and methodical and still find good deals, I think that's going to build a good foundation for hopefully a long career in this industry.
Amen, man. Very well said. I love it. Awesome. Well, William, you're amazing. This has been awesome. We'll go ahead and wind down here. We'll jump to the final five. First question: best advice you've gotten from a mentor?
Best advice I've gotten, man. There's like 3 or 4 different things, but I think the thing that I'll share today. So I was about to graduate college, and obviously, like, man, I had a really good like degree. I went to a good school. Surprisingly enough, I did not have any job opportunities lined up before I graduated. And I had a great GPA. I had great internship experience, and I had a great resume, but it just didn't happen. And I'm freaking out, and I was asking my mentors, like, hey, like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I don't know what to do. And he's like, man, he's like, you're in a really good spot. Like, you've got many good paths to take. And, maybe there's like a bad path. There's clearly some bad decisions that we can make, but a lot of these paths are really good. And he's like, man, just choose one and stick with it. Like, I think that's great advice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think one thing that I've seen that's prevalent is people are afraid that it's the wrong one. And it's like, why are you afraid of that? You just learn what you don't want to do now. So now you just go do something else,
Right.
or maybe it works out even better than you thought. What is about your career that makes you feel like you're fulfilling your why?
And I get to talk to people all day now, whether it's investor phone calls or, I run my own podcast and I get to meet so many cool stories, so many cool people with cool stories, and now I'm getting to be a guest on some awesome podcasts. So like I'm being constantly filled up because I get to have intentional conversations with people.
Gosh, totally. Couldn't agree more. Favorite non-real estate or investment related book?
Man, I'm a big Harry Potter guy.
Yes, me
So,
too. Me
so
too.
I love those books, man. When I read those for the first time, I think my sophomore year of college in the summer. And
Wow.
I kid you not, I read the entire series in like 2 weeks, dude.
Holy
Like,
cow.
loved it, loved it, loved it, loved it.
Wow. Yeah. I'm a little bit older, so I remember I read I read the last book in like 3 days. I never put it down. But yeah, I'm with you there for sure. Big Harry Potter fan. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Oh, man, I think running really fast would be cool.
Yeah, like Dash from The Incredibles.
Oh yeah, I would be like a Uber Eats delivery guy or something, you know.
The best one. They're like, how the heck is he delivering so fast?
And on foot.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love it. Cool. What's the best way for people to get a hold of you and learn more?
Man, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram, Facebook. I've got a website as well, and I'll shoot you all those links so they can find me. But yeah, I love connecting with people and just building relationships, man. I want to be known as the relational real estate guy.
Ooh, I like that. That's got a good ring to it. Sweet. Well, we'll link all that in the show notes, make it super easy. William, thank you so much for your time. You're awesome.
Yes, sir. Thank you, man.
Absolutely. Thank you again for tuning in. Who do you know that wants more cash flow? Share this episode with them so you can grow your cash flow together. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you're subscribed on your platform of choice so you never miss a new episode. Go to KataniCapitalGroup.com to learn more.